Welcome to Beyond the Comfort Zone Talking Shit with King-KAMBUF. Today, we are opening what is probably the most important and maybe the most overlooked door in architectural practice. It's that moment you decide which clients and which projects you're actually willing to accept.
It's a huge decision.
It really is. I mean, this decision is, you could argue, the single greatest factor in your firm's financial health and its professional liability exposure. We're calling it the front door of risk.
That's a great way to put it.
Because you get this wrong. I mean, if you accept a bad project, it can just consume everything. All your capacity, it can derail your best people, and, in the worst cases, it could put the entire firm at risk.
Absolutely.
The deep dive we're pulling from today is focused entirely on this critical professional moment. It's drawn from the architectural records and professional practices of the services of King-KAMBUF's Architecture Design Studios issue. Specifically, the daily ARE 5.0 Study Digest and Professional Practice Brief focusing on the PCM division. And our topic is go, no-go decision-making for new projects.
Exactly. And when we talk about structuring this process, especially, in the context of professional conduct and management, that PCM division, we're dealing directly with let's call them the three core pillars of practice.
Okay.
Finances, risk, and practice methodologies. You have to think of it this way. Your firm's time, its reputation, even its liability limit. These are all finite, precious resources.
Right. You can't just create more of them.
You can't. So every single time you pursue a new lead, you're making a conscious decision to leverage those resources. And if you treat that purely as a marketing activity, just focused on whether the client is willing to pay a fee, you've already failed the professional management test.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The mission here really is about imposing discipline. It's that simple. We need to stop looking at the client intake process as just an opportunity to secure revenue and start seeing it as a structured risk filter. And this filter, it's designed explicitly to protect the three things you just mentioned.
Yeah.
First, the firm's capacity. Can we actually do the work?
Right.
Second, its competence. Can we do it well and meet the standard of care? And third, its cash flow tolerance. Can we handle the financial risks involved? If a project quietly fails any one of those three tests, you aren't signing a contract. You're basically signing up for a professional disaster down the line.
That is the strategic shift we are enforcing. A go-no-go decision isn't a declaration of desire. It's not about wanting the cool project. It's a calculated, systematic assessment of viability, safety, and long-term strategic benefit. Desire is great for marketing. Rigor is essential for survival.
At its core, then, this whole gonna-go process is really a structured, standardized way to answer one single, very blunt question. And it's a question the firm principal or the risk manager should be asking every single time.
And that question is,
should we allocate our scarce professional time and our liability budget to this specific opportunity? We're explicitly trying to filter out the emotional stuff, the prestige elements. Doesn't matter if the building is going to be visually stunning or if the client is nationally famous. The only thing that should matter is whether the time we spend and the liability exposure we take on are justified by the expected return and the strategic alignment.
that clarity is just vital. Any licensed architect can produce a set of drawings, but the critical business distinction is, should you do this work?
Right, the can versus should.
Exactly. This moves you beyond just technical skill and into strategic fit and market positioning. I mean, think about a firm that specializes entirely in, say, complex laboratory design. Their approach to design a big suburban retail strip mall.
Okay.
Now, technically, they could do it. But if that project requires pulling their most specialized staff off profitable lab work and the firm gains zero long-term benefit in its core market, it just becomes random work.
And that random work is dangerous.
It is, because it risks diluting their brand, weakening their quality systems that were built for complex technical projects, and ultimately, it diverts resources from where they generate the highest profit and the lowest risk.
I think we need to visualize this process for everyone listening. The sources use this conceptual board sketch diagram that I think is really helpful. Imagine the traditional business development path as a classic funnel. It starts broad, right? You have a bunch of leads. Then it moves into deeper pursuit activities, narrows down to a formal proposal. Then you get a negotiation, and finally, fingers crossed, a signed contract.
A standard sales pipeline.
Exactly. But now you need to overlay that funnel with three incredibly thick red stop bars. These are gates A, B, and C, and the entire power of this system lies in the timing. We are designing this to stop bad work as early as possible.
And this is key.
Think about the cost curve of rejection.
Yeah.
Failing at Gate A is cheap. You lost, what, maybe an hour of internal research and an introductory phone call. You've invested almost nothing.
Exactly. But if you fail at Gate C, after you've already invested dozens, maybe hundreds of hours drafting a complex, bespoke proposal, you've engaged 3 consultants, maybe done some site due diligence.
All that upfront work.
The cost, both in wasted time and opportunity cost, is just massive. You've tied up your senior leadership, you've annoyed your consultants, and you've potentially missed out on a good project you didn't have capacity for because you were chasing the bad one.
And of course, the most expensive failure of all is actually clearing Gate C, signing the contract, and then realizing 6 months into construction administration that the project is doomed.
Ooh, yeah.
Doomed because of some fundamental issue you ignored back at the beginning, a compressed schedule, unverified client funding, or a competence gap. That failure doesn't just cost you your profit margin, it threatens the viability of the firm itself. It destroys utilization rates and forces you to pull good staff off profitable work to manage a crisis you created yourself.
So the goal really is to create mandatory, non-negotiable pause points, to enforce that professional management. No principal, no business development lead should be allowed to bypass these gates just based on ego or enthusiasm.
So these 3 gates, they're sequential. You have to clear one to get to the next.
Absolutely sequential. You cannot seriously pursue the work until you clear Gate A. You absolutely must clear Gate B, confirming you can safely deliver the service before you even commit to writing a fee proposal. And then you must clear Gate C, confirming profitability and payment terms before a single signature hits any agreement.
Okay, let's break them down. Let's start with Gate A. The headline here is, should we chase?
Right. This is the pursuit go-no-go.
This is the initial velocity check. Do we dedicate any real resources to this beyond that first phone call? And the focus seems pretty straightforward. Strategic fit and one path.
The first step is confirming that strategic fit. We talked about random work, but let's look at the positive side. Niche strengthening. If your firm specializes in K-12 schools and you get a lead for a cutting-edge high school, pursuing that project strengthens your brand, it deepens your staff's expertise, and it builds relationships with reliable contractors and public agencies in your sector. That is a strategic win, even if the fee is a little tight.
But chasing, say, a luxury apartment tower.
Right. It might be a fun project, but if it doesn't align with your expertise or your future goals, it becomes a resource drain. It pulls you into unfamiliar legal territory, unfamiliar codes.
Okay, that makes sense. So that brings us to the next filter, client fit. This feels like maybe the most important early filter. A terrible client can sabotage a perfect project.
They absolutely will.
Yeah.
Here, we need to assess their reputation. Do they treat their consultants fairly? Do you have access to the true decision maker?
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Are you dealing with a low-level project manager who can't actually sign off on anything?
It's a classic trap. And you have to assess their realism. Are they known in the market for demanding champagne results on a beer budget? Are they famous for grinding design teams into the dirt during negotiation? And critically, what is their payment history? A client that's notorious for 90-day payments introduces a massive cash flow risk right out of the gate, regardless of how prestigious they are.
So if you can't get access to the person who's actually signing the checks, the one with the financial and programmatic authority.
That is an immediate major red flag. You're guaranteeing design churn and decision paralysis later on.
Okay, next up under Gate A is competitive position. Time is finite. If you're chasing a project where a competitor has a 5-year deep-seated relationship with the client, or if the request for proposal, the RFP, reads like it was basically custom written for another firm's portfolio, your pursuit time is almost certainly wasted.
You have to identify a believable path to winning. What is your edge? Is it a superior relationship? Is it some unique technical differentiation? Is it highly specific past work? If you honestly estimate your chance of winning is less than, say, 20%.
It's probably not worth it.
The opportunity cost usually outweighs the pursuit effort. And that's where opportunity cost becomes quantifiable. Every hour your principal or senior PM spends chasing a 10% chance lead is an hour they can't spend managing current, profitable work, mentoring staff, or working on firm development.
Like updating your standard details or something?
Exactly. If chasing a high-risk lead means you pull resources from a client who is actively paying you well, you are literally cannibalizing your current profit for a long-shot gamble. And that is a fundamental failure of practice management.
Okay, so let's say we've passed Gate A. The project fits, the client seems sane, we think we have a real shot at winning. Now we hit gate B. This is the serious internal technical check, the standard of care gate.
This is where we measure the firm's actual ability to execute without incurring liability. This is where it gets really interesting, because a failure here means you're actively exposing yourself to professional negligence claims.
So the primary filter is pure competence.
It is. Does this project push the boundaries of your technical skill set? Does it involve a new building type? Say you're moving from standard office buildings to complex medical imaging centers. Does it involve an unusual code regime, maybe specific hazardous material storage or unique seismic requirements your team has never navigated?
Right. If you have a zero experience in Type I high-rise construction, taking on a 30-story project is brave.
It's reckless. It exposes you to unfamiliar liabilities, unfamiliar regulatory hurdles. You have to identify those specialized consultant requirements immediately and verify that you have established trustworthy relationships with them.
This feeds directly into schedule realism, which feels like a leading indicator of risk. I mean, this is where the human element breaks down, right?
It is. A compressed deadline doesn't magically make complex coordination simpler. It guarantees that mistakes that would normally be caught during QA/QC reviews are missed.
You're just cutting out the time for checks and balances.
Precisely. When you squeeze the time allocated for a consultant coordination, for peer review, for your own internal documentation standards, you are fundamentally eroding the standard of care protection you offer yourself. If the timeline demands an impossibly fast delivery like 75% CDs in 10 weeks for a complex building, the schedule has to be adjusted or the project must be declined. You cannot deliver safely under that kind of pressure.
And then there's delivery method risk, things like design build or fast track.
These methods radically alter the traditional owner-architect-contractor dynamic. In design build, the architect often contracts directly with the contractor, not the owner.
And that creates an ethical pressure, right? Your primary paymaster is now the party executing the construction.
Exactly. It can potentially force design decisions based on cost over the long-term benefit to the client.
So tell us more about fast track. How does that specifically increase liability for the architect?
Fast track fundamentally requires overlapping phases. You are starting the construction phase pouring foundations, ordering long lead steel before the construction documents for the upper floors or the interior systems are even finalized.
So you're building while you're still designing.
You're building while you're still designing. It means critical decisions about materials and systems have to be made under intense pressure before the overall design is complete. If the design intent changes later, those early construction elements have to be ripped out or modified. That leads to massive change orders and, crucially, makes the architect the easy target for liability when these costly delays happen.
Because you're being asked to make decisions with incomplete information.
You're being asked to design while the client is building. It multiplies the potential for error and scope creep exponentially.
Okay, and the last check in Gate B is quality system readiness. So your existing QA/QC standards were built for the kinds of projects you currently do.
Right. If your internal checklists and documentation standards were built for simple wood frame commercial buildings, and now you're taking on a highly technical, high MEP intensity laboratory, your current quality system is likely insufficient.
That insufficiency is going to show up somewhere.
It will. It'll result in documentation errors, coordination gaps, and construction phase problems that will be expensive to fix and threaten your reputation.
Okay. So we've confirmed strategic fit in Gate A. We've confirmed we can deliver safely in Gate B. Now we hit Gate C, the final, ruthless financial viability test.
Right. And as you said earlier, profitability is not just that the fee sounds big.
Precisely. So the first filter here is the detailed estimated hours versus fee analysis. This is the core engine of firm management. You need a detailed, phase-by-phase breakdown of the expected hours for your team.
How long for SD?
For DNE.
For that complex coordination,
Yeah.
for construction administration.
Exactly. If your work plan suggests, conservatively, that you need, say, 1,800 hours to properly execute the standard of care for this project, but the fee structure only supports 1,200 hours based on your profit goals, you immediately have a 600-hour gap.
And that gap guarantees one thing. You will either lose your margin or you will underservice the client, neither of which is acceptable professional practice.
And this calculation has to include the consultant burden. This is a major area of risk.
It's one that many firms overlook. The architect typically contracts directly with their sub-consultant structural, MEP, civil. That makes the architect the prime professional. This means you carry the vicarious liability for your consultant's work.
Meaning if the MEP engineer makes a mistake?
The owner sues you, the architect, and then you have to turn around and sue the MEP engineer. You're the legal and financial bottleneck.
Wait, so what if the client suggests they want to hire and pay the MEP engineer directly? Does that help the architect?
It simplifies your cash flow, yes, but it often complicates the liability and coordination flow. If the client holds the contract with the consultant, you, the architect, lose direct control over that consultant's performance, their schedule, their quality systems.
So you're still responsible for coordinating them, but you have less leverage.
Exactly. It can weaken the team structure and create communication silos, which actually increases the risk of design conflict. In either case, absolute clarity on that financial flow, who pays whom and when, is necessary before you sign anything.
Which leads to the fatal financial filter. Payment terms plus client solvency. This is where cash flow dies.
It is. We need to identify the pressure points. A project that requires you to carry the financial load for 60 to 90 days, coupled with no upfront retainer. That's the strongest single indicator threatening your firm's cash flow.
Even on a project that's profitable on paper.
Even then, if you have to wait 3 months to get paid, you are financing the client's operation out of your working capital. You could be starving your other, more reliable projects of cash.
So you have to verify the client's financial standing.
You must, especially with a new developer. Securing evidence of financing status or a letter of credit isn't an insult. It's essential professional due diligence. And you have to negotiate terms like monthly billing, retainers, and critically, a clear contractual right to suspend services immediately if payment is delayed beyond a defined period.
Okay, let's apply all three of these gates to a really realistic scenario. This feels like a textbook high-wire act designed to test every single one of these risk filters. The scenario involves a high-stakes project, a 22,000 square foot tenant improvement, plus a partial addition for an outpatient clinic. So right away, you hear clinic and you think complexity.
High-risk, demanding work. It specifically cites high MEP intensity, which means complex systems, massive coordination needs.
And the jurisdiction is a strict suburban plan-check municipality, famous for being slow and rigid. And to top it off, the owner is demanding a must-be-open-in-7-month schedule.
The client profile itself just throws up red flags across all three gates at once. It's a first-time developer.
So they likely have no idea what they're doing.
Their understanding of the architectural process, of realistic schedules, of permit cycles is likely zero. They're offering a low starter fee, and they dangle that classic dangerous bait. The promise of lots more work if this one goes well.
Right, the carrot.
And internally, the firm has a serious capacity issue. Their senior PM is already booked, and their own healthcare experience is marginal. It's limited to small, low-intensity medical office interiors. This is a huge leap.
And let's not forget the delivery path. The client wants design-build-ish, but we'll figure out the contractor later.
That's just contractual ambiguity bordering on chaos. This scenario hits every single point we defined as high risk. Competence gaps, capacity constraints, schedule compression, inexperienced client, low fee. It's a minefield.
So how does a competent architect navigate this?
You apply the gates. You stop the process before you commit any serious time or resources.
Okay, so Gate A actions. Pursuit. Before any real proposal writing starts, the architect has to immediately focus on verification. Who is the actual decision maker? Where does the ultimate financial authority lie?
And you have to ask for evidence of the client's standing. Is the financing actually in place and fully secure? What are the real penalties or drivers behind that crazy 7-month opening date?
Right. If the answer is we lose our lease or we lose our investors, the project risk profile just went through the roof.
Exactly. And you have to identify a credible competitive edge. And I want to be clear here. A low fee is not a competitive edge. It's a financial concession you will absolutely regret. If you don't have a real edge, you decline the proposal invitation immediately.
Okay, but let's say for the sake of argument, you find a compelling reason to pursue. You move to Gate B, the risk management phase.
Right. Gate B actions. Risk inventory. This is where you inventory the technical liabilities. We're talking about clinical operations. Complex patient flows, high utility demands, stringent infection control protocols, and often specific approvals from health departments. The AHJ sensitivities.
So you need specialized help.
Immediately. You have to mandate the involvement of specialized consultants, a robust MEP engineer, and very likely a medical equipment planner. And the cost of those consultants has to be reflected in the fee.
And what about that 7-month schedule?
You have to determine if it requires aggressive overlapping phases. If that timeline mandates issuing construction documents in 3 separate packages: foundation, then shell, then interiors, you have to identify the inevitable risk this creates for errors and change orders. And you document that risk clearly to the client. This moves the discussion from just designing to mitigating risk during design.
And finally, Gate C actions, protection. Will this project actually make money?
This is where you build a detailed, rough hours plan by phase. Include the consultant hours and your required QA/QC time. If that plan confirms you are grossly under fee, you have to stop the negotiation. You demand a retainer that covers the necessary early due diligence work.
And you lock down the payment terms.
Monthly billing, net 30 days maximum, clear right to suspend. And this is absolutely non-negotiable. You meticulously price the additional services triggers every time the client forces acceleration, makes a rapid permit revision, or changes the scope in a major way. That is an additional service, and it has to be priced to match the heightened risk and effort.
So given this whole stack of red flags, inexperienced client, capacity issues, aggressive schedule, competence gap, the initial professional decision has to be a firm NO.
It has to be. Unless every single one of those conditions is immediately mitigated. The schedule must be made realistic, say 10 to 12 months minimum for this complexity. The financing must be verified, and the fee must align with the risk.
But let's say the firm wants this work purely for strategic reasons. Maybe they desperately need a clinic in their portfolio. What is the responsible professional alternative to just saying no?
The responsible alternative is the 2-step engagement. You do not commit to full services. You propose a paid feasibility and due diligence phase first.
So you break it up.
You break it up.
Yeah.
This phase, which is properly compensated, allows the firm to verify all the assumptions from gates A, B, and C. You check the complex codes, you vet the client's site conditions, you scope the necessary consultants, and you verify if the schedule is even possible.
And then you have a clear decision point.
Exactly. You establish a clear decision gate after this paid phase. If the findings confirm the schedule is impossible or the client financing is unstable, you walk away. And you've been paid for your time, and you've protected your firm from that long-term liability. This is the professional way to manage a borderline project.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit from the subjective fit and capacity to the hard objective numbers. So what does this all mean when we talk about the bottom line?
We need to move beyond just looking at the lump sum fee
Yes.
and really understand the critical conversion from dollars into the only currency that really matters: allowable labor hours.
This step in Gate C is absolutely non-negotiable. Architects have to stop looking at the gross fee and start calculating the project's allowable direct labor hours. If you spend more hours than the project can financially support, you fail your firm's management objectives, period.
So how do we do that calculation?
The calculation hinges on 2 key internal firm metrics. We start with your target net multiplier, and we need the firm's burden direct labor cost.
Okay, let's define these slowly because this is where the money is made or lost. The net multiplier, and you often hear a target of 3.0 or higher. What does that actually represent?
It represents how many dollars of net revenue the firm must generate for every single dollar of direct salary it spends on a project.
Okay, so break down that 3.0 for me if I spend $1 on salary. If you spend $1 on direct labor, that's the employee's salary for that hour, the firm needs to generate $3 in revenue from the fee to meet its targets. The first dollar covers that direct labor cost.
Got it.
The second dollar covers all your overhead, your rent, utilities, insurance, software licenses, marketing, support staff, everything. And that third dollar is your profit. If your multiplier falls to 2.0, you are barely covering your overhead and making no profit. That is simply unsustainable.
And the second component, the burden direct labor cost. This isn't just the employee's take-home wage, right?
No, absolutely not. This cost is the true hourly cost of having that employee sitting at their desk. It accounts for their wages, plus all payroll taxes, unemployment, health insurance benefits, retirement contributions. That cost is substantially higher than their hourly wage.
Okay, let's use the specific numbers from the source to make this real. A proposed lump sum fee of $180,000.
A target net multiplier of 3.0.
And a blended burden direct labor cost of $60 hour.
Right, so here's the formula in action. First, allowable direct labor equals the fee divided by your net multiplier.
So step 1, convert that fee to the pot of money you can actually spend on people.
Exactly. If your target is 3.0, you can afford to spend 1/3 of that fee on the people performing the service. So $180,000 divided by 3.0 equals $60,000.
Okay, $60,000 for labor. Now, step 2 is to convert that dollar amount into the actual hours your team can spend.
You take that allowable direct labor and divide it by your burdened direct labor costs. So $60,000 divided by $60 an hour. That gives you 1,000 hours.
1,000 hours.
Now for the critical interpretation. 1,000 total hours is the absolute maximum budget for your entire design effort, from the kickoff meeting to the final punch list, to maintain that healthy 3.0 multiplier.
And let's go back to our case study. A 22,000 square foot outpatient clinic TI and addition, high MEP, on a 7-month schedule.
Does 1,000 hours seem like enough? It has to cover the principal's review, programming, detailed consultant coordination, schematic design, the rigorous complexity of construction documents for a clinical space, all your client meetings, multiple plan check cycles, bidding, and all of construction administration.
It seems incredibly thin.
It's catastrophic. If your preliminary estimate suggests a project this complex needs 1,500 to 2,000 hours to meet the standard of care, that 1,000-hour budget is a disaster waiting to happen. The resulting deficit, those 500 to 1,000 hours you can't afford, guarantees massive margin erosion, professional underservice that leads to liability, and complete staff burnout.
So this financial math, run before you sign anything, is the purest and simplest form of risk mitigation.
It is. If the fee doesn't support the hours needed to meet the standard of care, it is a guaranteed no-go.
So while that fee calculation is objective, we also need a structured way to quantify the subjective stuff like client reputation or strategic fit, to get rid of that emotional decision-making.
And for that, we use a weighted scorecard. It transforms professional judgment, that gut feeling, into a measurable score, typically out of 500 points.
This is great because it forces you to formalize that gut feeling everyone has about a project. Let's look at the categories and their weight, because not all risks are equal.
Right, not at all. We assign the highest weights to the risk factors that most directly threaten your cash flow and your capacity. For example, client reliability and solvency gets a weight of 20. Your own capacity and staff availability, also a weight of 20.
And fee adequacy, from the calculation we just did.
Also a 20. Those are the big three. They can sink you the fastest. Then you have things like strategic fit and competence or technical risk, weighted a little lower at 15. And finally, something like contract terms clarity gets a weight of 10.
So running the numbers from our risky clinic scenario, which we know rated low across the board, mostly 2s and 3s out of 5, we got to a total score of 230 out of 500. That's 46%.
And the interpretation is the key. Most well-managed firms will set a threshold, usually around 70% or higher, to proceed immediately. A score of 46% dictates a firm an immediate no-go.
And what this quantified approach does is it forces leadership to acknowledge the risks in a tangible, reportable format. It makes it impossible for the marketing department to just argue based on, but the client really wants us.
Exactly. If leadership still wants that job, they now have to explain how they plan to increase those 2s and 3s to 5s. By hiring new staff, by securing a larger fee, by mitigating the schedule risk.
Okay, so the decision to accept a project that just initiates the professional liability journey. The contract you sign is what fundamentally defines and controls the amount of risk you carry for the next several years.
We need to talk about how specific contract language impacts your liability exposure. This is a core focus for professional practice because it defines the defensive barriers every project must have.
So what are the top 3 ways to reduce liability in the contract?
The sources are pretty clear on this. Number 1, a meticulously written scope definition with exclusions. You have to define not just what you are doing, but explicitly what you are not doing.
So if you're not responsible for environmental testing or specialized equipment planning,
you exclude it in writing. This manages the client's expectations and gives you a contractual shield against claims of non-performance for work that was never part of the deal.
Okay, number 2.
QA/QC milestones and a peer review plan. Quality assurance is the professional demonstration that you are meeting the standard of care. Having defined checkpoints, internal reviews, peer review sign-offs, this provides documentary evidence that you exercise due diligence and professional rigor. That's crucial if a dispute ever goes to litigation.
And the 3rd.
Clear additional services triggers. This ensures that the financial risk of scope creep is handled contractually. If the client makes changes after design development is approved, or if the fast-track schedule requires 5 separate permit packages, these must trigger predefined, compensated additional services. This prevents the firm from eating the cost of extra work, which is a primary cause of underservice and burnout.
Conversely, what are the absolute key avoidances? What contract language should make you immediately call your lawyer?
You must rigorously avoid any language that promises an outcome. An architect commits to professional services and due diligence. We do not control the exterior factors. The major insurance red flag is agreeing to language that says you will warrant a perfect outcome, guarantee the construction costs, or guarantee the schedule completion date.
And why is that guarantee so problematic?
Because a guarantee or a warranty puts you far outside the insurable standard of care. Your insurance policy covers negligence, failing to meet the standard of care, but it typically does not cover contractual guarantees.
So if you guarantee the project won't exceed $20 million, and it comes in at $22 million because of material cost spikes or contractor error.
Factors entirely outside your control. You could be held financially responsible for that $2 million difference, potentially without any insurance coverage. It exposes the firm to massive, unmanaged liability. If a contract demands a warranty, you either strike the language or you decline the project. It's that simple.
And let's just hammer this home one more time. The cash flow crisis.
Yes, because cash flow kills firms faster than liability claims. That combination of long 60 to 90-day payment terms with no upfront retainer is a financial death sentence for many small to mid-sized practices. You are essentially extending an interest-free line of credit to your client for 3 months. A retainer money held upfront to cover the first month or two of services is the minimum defense against that initial cash drain.
We also need absolute clarity on defining roles in the contract, specifically around construction. Who's responsible for cost estimating, and who is responsible for the contractor's means and methods?
The contract must clearly state that the architect is providing design documents. The contractor, by definition, determines the means, methods, sequencing, and safety procedures of construction. Architects must avoid getting involved in contractor means and methods.
Why is that so important?
If you start giving instructions on how to brace an excavation or the order in which materials should be lifted, you are actively shifting construction phase liability, including safety and sequencing risk, onto your design team. And that is not our expertise, nor is it our insurable role.
We also need to hit the ethics corner. The sources highlight a critical scenario. A developer, trying to expedite things, offers you a referral fee or a kickback if you recommend their preferred contractor. They might even frame it as industry standard.
It's a classic, tricky trap, and the professional response must be firm, immediate, and documented. You decline the offer, and you clearly document that boundary.
Why is it such a problem?
It's a fundamental ethical conflict of interest under the standard of care. Your professional judgment and your recommendations must be based solely on the client's best interest, the contractor's qualifications, their value, their track record, not on some side compensation for you. Accepting a fee like that compromises public trust. It distorts your professional judgment, and it can compromise the integrity of the whole bidding process. It is a violation of the professional code of ethics.
So it's not just about personal gain. It fundamentally corrupts the relationship you have with the client and the public. You're no longer an impartial professional advisor.
Precisely. If that client ever finds out you received a kickback, they will rightly question every single subsequent decision you make. Every material choice, every cost estimate, every schedule decision. It completely corrodes the trust, and that damage is often irreparable. It far outweighs the value of any referral fee. Professional practice is founded on unbiased judgment.
Okay, this whole deep dive is designed to provide clear, memorable rules for professional practice. Let's try to synthesize all this advice into some practical takeaways and strategic responses to common traps.
We have to be able to deliver the correct response to situations that threaten the integrity of the owner-architect agreement.
So let's start with the most common one, the uncontracted start. Your long-standing, trusted client calls and says, "We have a hot lead. We need you to start programming and site analysis immediately. We'll sign the contract next week." What's the move?
The move is not to start based on a verbal promise. The best next step is issuing a proposal with the defined scope, fee, and terms, and requesting written authorization or a retainer before you commit any design effort. Starting work without a contract means you have no agreed-upon scope, no agreed-upon fee, and no clear right to suspend service if things go sour. You are performing work essentially for free based on hope. That is unmanaged risk.
Okay, next scenario. The borderline project strategy. The Go scorecard is hovering in that uncomfortable zone, maybe 60%. But leadership insists they want the project for a clear strategic reason, like portfolio development.
The correct move is not to lower the fee to make it work. That just guarantees failure. Instead, the strategy is to phase the engagement. Propose that paid feasibility study or due diligence phase first. This provides a clear decision gate before you commit to full services, and it ensures the firm gets compensated for the time it spends mitigating risk, rather than just gambling on a full contract.
And what about lack of experience fast track? You have the staff capacity, but you lack deep experience in a specialized building type, and the client insists on a fast track schedule.
The professional answer here is not a rigid no. The responsible move is to pursue only if you can immediately add experienced team members or specialized consultants to your team, and adjust the schedule and the fee to match that heightened risk. Competence can be billed or rented, but the fee and schedule have to explicitly reflect that necessary investment and the increased risk mitigation that's required. You manage the risk professionally, you don't recklessly ignore it.
Okay, let's solidify all this with a definitive pinup summary. The key takeaways everyone listening should internalize tonight. First one for me. No written scope definition and no written authorization or retainer equals absolutely no start. Define the terms before you commit the time.
Second, a fast-track schedule combined with an unfamiliar building type requires you to add external expertise or immediately say no. Do not let time compression compromise your ability to meet the standard of care.
Third, bad payment terms like 60 to 90-day cycles without a retainer can sink even theoretically profitable projects. Cash flow management is the silent killer in professional practice.
And finally, never agree to contractual guarantees or warranties of project outcomes, cost, or schedule. Your commitment is to professional service and due diligence, not to acting as an insurer.
That concludes our deep dive into the go-no-go decision-making process. We walked through the three crucial gates. Gate A for strategic fit, Gate B for capacity and competence, and Gate C for profitability and cash flow. And we saw how essential it is to apply this structured risk filter early and objectively. Making these decisions early transforms a potentially reactive, crisis-driven practice into a proactive, financially stable business.
The measure of a successful professional practice is often defined not by the sheer volume of work it accepts, but by the high-risk, low-profit, or low-fit projects it wisely rejects. And to apply this knowledge immediately, tonight's action item for you should be to practice the fee-to-hours conversion until it is completely automatic.
I like that, a direct action.
Take three different fees, say $100K, $300K, $500, and calculate the maximum allowable hours your firm can spend while maintaining a 3.0 multiplier. Then compare those hours to a realistic work plan for a project of that size. Or use the structure we discussed to draft a one-page go-no-go scorecard for your firm. Set a non-negotiable minimum threshold for proceeding.
That is how you turn high-level theory into robust, life-saving professional practice. Thank you for joining us for Architectural Records and Professional Practices of the Services of KING-KAMBUF's Architecture Design Studios issue, Daily IE 5.0 Study Digest and Professional Practice Briefs Divisions, PCM feature topic, Go-No-Go decision-making for new projects. Until next time, stay safe and keep those multipliers high.